Security Secretary Chad Wolf after refusing Wolf's invitation to meet just a few weeks ago. The mayor also joining colleagues with an appeal to Congress.
Wheeler has tweeted out a copy of a letter signed by the mayors of Chicago, Seattle, Albuquerque, Washington, D.C., and Kansas City, demanding that Congress pass legislation that stops the administration from sending federal agents into their cities. Kansas, Chicago, and Albuquerque are getting assistance from FBI, ATF, and others to help solve crimes. Portland, Seattle, and D.C. got agents to deal with protest actions like protecting federal property. The mayors say residents are exercising their First Amendment rights and call the federal use of force egregious, but they do not mention the increasing crime rates in some of these locations, nor the attempts to destroy federal property.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. In a Monday night tweet, President Trump says the protesters are actually sick and deranged anarchists and agitators who would destroy American cities. Moderna says it has begun injecting volunteers with its experimental coronavirus vaccine, the final phase of its clinical testing. President Trump, speaking at a facility in North Carolina Monday, says the U.S. has made great progress against the virus.
The mortality rate for patients over the age of 18 is 85% lower than it was in April. Think of that, 85%.
Dr. Anthony Fauci of the White House Coronavirus Task Force tells Fox News this is the quickest a vaccine has ever entered phase 3 clinical trials. He expects the results from the tests in mid to late fall. America is listening to Fox News.
Off a date, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
A missing mom mystery in Florida. A toddler found wandering alone through an apartment complex on Sunday.
We believe the young boy that was found is approximately 2 to 3 years of age. He was found wearing a T-shirt and diapers, and that's it.
And Tanya Ruiz of the Miramar, Florida Police Department says the boy doesn't know his family name or where he's from. Gina Lewis, who lives in Alabama, believes the boy is her nephew.
Only the worst things possible are going through my mind because I know my sister and she might do some crazy things sometimes, but she would never leave Camden. She would never leave him.
Police say they are actively searching for Leela Cavett, who they believe is the boy's mother. Members of Congress honoring their late colleague John Lewis on Monday.
John Lewis paid his final visit to the Capitol. Military honor guard hoisting Lewis's casket into the rotunda. Mourners socially distanced around the rotunda perimeter. John Lewis made his mark on Washington long before becoming a congressman. He spoke alongside Martin Luther King during the 1963 March on Washington. King sent the young Lewis a bus ticket to get involved in the civil rights movement. Lewis's remains returned to Alabama over the weekend, crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge one last time, the site of Bloody Sunday. 32 persons have lain in state in the Capitol. Lewis becomes the first African-American to lie in state inside the rotunda.
Fox's Chad Pergram. John Lewis' funeral will be held later this week at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King preached. Prosecutors in the cases against 4 former Minneapolis police officers charged in George Floyd's death say they do not want audio or visual coverage of the trials, scheduled to start in March. In Minnesota, a judge can allow the recording of criminal proceedings, but only if both sides consent. The state did not give a reason for its objection, and apparently isn't required to. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Chili's introduces the new Crispy Ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your Crispy Ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with one of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's Crispy Ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
$5 foot long, pile high with veggies.
They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is also brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary. Whoa. I keep away from the speaker on your phone there. I coughed a couple of times, and I don't want anybody catching anything that's gone out over the airwaves. Let me start it over again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Did I get it right the second time, Real Joe?
You got it right, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so progressing right on into the heart of Tall Tales, known as Zemi Ikotny. This is not going to be a nice day for the Guam Daily Post. It's not a nice day for the Daily News, of course, because they never post local editorials, so I'm not going to spend much time on them. But as far as the Post is concerned, not good at all, Guam Daily Post. You have let your readers down today. Here it is. Time to make noise about Guam's unequal status, starting with EITC, Earned Income Tax Credit. Now, let me just stop there and explain what the Earned Income Earned Income Tax Credit is. It is a function of the Internal Revenue Code, which for people who don't listen to Tall Tales all the time would be referred to as a federal law, the Internal Revenue Code. That's the tax law of the United States. So the tax laws of the United States, the Internal Revenue Code, are in application here, but with a twist. That is that if you pay income tax here, you're going to use a Form 1040. You could use the same 1040 here that the folks in Chicago used. Wouldn't make any difference. And you can you could use TurboTax. TurboTax works just as well here as it would work in Utah, because although it's not exactly federal income tax, it is the mirror image of federal income tax. And the big difference is that the money that you pay for income tax here does not go to Washington, D.C. for the United States Congress to squander. We keep it right here and let our legislature squander it instead. So who gets to squander is the big difference between the income tax in the States and the income tax here. Other than that, they're as close as identical twins. Yeah. By the way, Real Joe Cruz, are identical twins always of the same sex?
No, sir.
They're not?
No.
How could that be, Real Joe Cruz?
It all depends on how one identifies.
I guess you can't really tell until they're about 25. And then,
yes,
yeah,
sir.
Yeah, so one might decide that they are a male.
True.
And the other one might decide that they are a female, right?
True.
That's possible. So the earned income tax is a function of the Internal Revenue Code. So let's talk about tax credits for a moment and tax deductions. When you file your taxes, you can itemize your deductions and deduct certain of your expenses from your income and thereby reduce your tax liability. Or you can take what's called the standard deduction, which is the same for everybody under 65, or special, it's less if you're over 65. And if you're 65 and blind, you really got it made as far as the standard deduction is concerned. So that's a deduction, and what it does is it reduces the income upon which the tax rate is applied. Okay? Now, there's a tax credit, and a tax credit is something that is applied directly to your tax liability. So if you go through your entire income tax filings and it's determined that you have a $10,000 tax bill and you have a credit for $1,000, you apply the credit to the $10,000 and you owe $9,000 instead of $10,000. Are we squared away on what a tax credit is, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the earned income tax credit applies to people with relatively low incomes. So there is a sliding scale. So at a particular income level, a tax credit arises that would be applied to the tax that the taxpayer owes. The size of the credit is dependent on the size of the amount of income of the taxpayer and the number of his dependents. So someone with a low wage and a lot of kids is going to get a large credit. I don't get any credit at all. Believe it or not, I make too much money. And you don't have to make too much money to get up above the EITC level. Okay, so that's a tax credit. So the tax credit is applied to your tax liability. So if a person owed $1,000 in taxes and he had a $1,000 credit, his tax bill would be zero. He would owe no taxes at all. The earned income tax credit is different. Because if you're an average taxpayer and your income tax credit is larger than your tax liability, let's say that you owed $1,000 tax in taxes and you had a $1,500 credit, you just owe no taxes. You don't go below zero. However, for the earned income tax credit, the EITC, the taxpayer actually goes below zero. For that taxpayer with a low income and a lot of children, he not only doesn't pay anything in, he gets a check back. And this is called the earned income tax credit. So when we read about how much the government of Guam owes in tax refunds, much of those refunds are, I think over 50% of the tax refunds are actually tax credits arising under the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit. So far, so good, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
You are the litmus test here. Okay, so that's the Earned Income Tax Credit. Now, what does the Earned Income Tax Credit have to do with state law? I can explain that in 0 words. Nothing. It's a federal law, federal application that's applicable to Guam because of our mirror image status. In the Organic Act, there is a section that says that the internal revenue laws in the United States shall likewise be applicable in Guam. And it's really an interesting setup. For income tax purposes, the governor of Guam is analogous to the Secretary of Treasury in the United States. So we collect the income tax here, it stays here. One other slight difference is that any litigation involving payment of taxes doesn't go to the Superior Court, it goes to the District Court, to the federal court, as it were. So that's how the EITC works. And it's funded by the income tax that people pay in the United States. It's funded by the income tax that people pay here on Guam. Starting right out the bat, it is not, I repeat, it is not a federal mandate, which is something that local politicians love that phrase. There's so many there are so many unfunded federal mandates here. It's no wonder we can never save any money. It's not an unfunded federal mandate. It is funded here exactly the same way that it's funded in the United States, but through the taxes that are collected through income tax. Okay, so now that you know what the EITC, the Earned Income Tax, is and what it isn't, you could be the editor of the Guam Daily Post. You could be the representative to Washington. You could be because other people perhaps deliberately don't understand it, or maybe it's not deliberate. But here's the Post. Time to make noise about Guam's unequal status, starting with EITC. Depending on the issue at hand, the power movers in Washington either view Guam with importance or as a burden with a handout for more federal cash. We have lost count of how many times over the past few decades Pentagon and military brass types have referred to Guam as, quote, the tip of the spear. Yeah, it's because they're not imaginative enough to come up with other figures of speech. They go back to the old tried and true, well, you know, Guam is the tip of the spear. Guam is the tip of the spear for the nation's defense in the Asia-Pacific region. We are literally the closest U.S. soil to potential military hotspots in the South China Sea. We are in line of fire should there be escalation or military conflict with China or North Korea. The U.S. military's latest push for another missile defense system for Guam, a month after Japan turned down such a system, is proof of the island's importance in the nation's security, not to mention the future relocation of thousands of Marines from Okinawa to Guam. Can you play the Marine Corps? No, you can't, can you? That's
No,
too
sir.
bad. You know, from the halls of Montezuma. Yeah, okay. Because we stand closest to the potential hotspots, you'd think D.C. policymakers would be more receptive to Guam's pleas. No, I wouldn't. You know, what the Post is doing here is what historians call waving the bloody shirt. Waving the bloody shirt. In other words, there's a military dimension here, and because people get killed, military soldiers get killed, etc., there's a special deference owed to the military, which I don't dispute. But this argument, well, you know, so many people from Guam have enlisted in the military, therefore, well, I go along with the first part, but I don't go along with the therefore. And that's what the Post is trying to do here. Because we stand closest to the potential hotspots, you'd think D.C. policymakers would be more receptive to Guam's pleas. And what we're talking about isn't a request for another handout, although we have made our requests and we'll certainly take them as they come, but for the federal government to make Guam whole on a financial burden that has been placed on our local government as a result of federal tax credits that apply to Guam. Right, federal tax credits against what? The federal income tax that's been applied to Guam. So I've made this point a million times before. If you would take a community of 160,000 in the States, let's say Oceanside, and say, I'll make you a deal, Oceanside. You cancel all your local taxes of any stripe, state tax, local tax, whatever, and if you do, we'll let you keep all the federal income tax that's paid in town. Man, they'd pick it up in a heartbeat. We have a deal that's better than any other community in the mainland because what other people would pay in federal income tax, we get to keep. All right. So reading that sentence again, the federal government to make Guam whole on a financial burden that has been placed on our local government as a result of federal tax credits that apply to Guam. The EITC is a benefit for working people with low to moderate income. The EITC reduces the amount of tax a household owes and can result in a tax refund, even if the household doesn't pay income taxes because they have a combination of very low income and multiple children as dependents. Okay? Does that sound familiar, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Where did you ever hear that before?
Right here.
At the beginning of the program,
Yes,
from
sir.
me, right?
Yes, sir.
So you know that the Post is correct if they're saying the same thing I'm saying, right? Okay, now we get into it. States are reimbursed by the federal government for EITC payments. No! Wrong! And I'm going to grade the Post right now. I've seen enough. I'm going to give them their grade right now. I won't even wait until the end. Here it is. 0. Yeah. 0.
That's a poster?
This is the Post.
Oh,
I'm shocked. I tell you, I'm shocked. Because I expect so much more from the Post. States are reimbursed by the federal government for EITC payments. That's just wrong. It's just dead wrong. It couldn't be any more wronger if they tried. And as I explained, the EITC has nothing to do with the states. It's a federal tax. It operates within the Internal Revenue Code, which is applicable to Guam, because Guam is the mirror image of the Internal Revenue Code. So it's as applicable here as it is in California. Does California pay an earned income tax credit? No. Does California collect federal taxes? No. That's the secret. The states do not collect federal taxes. They have their own silly tax laws, but they do not collect tax under the Internal Revenue Code. And because they don't collect tax under the Internal Revenue Code, there's no income, there's no tax to credit the EITC against. as I explained, we are different. We've got a really sweetheart deal because the income tax that gets paid in Guam stays here. That's why the EITC pay. That's why we have to pay the EITC. States are reimbursed by the federal government for EITC payments. Just wrong. The government of Guam has been asking for the federal government to treat Guam equally and reimburse our government as well. Well, we are being treated equally because the states aren't being reimbursed. Gov Guam has asked for more than a decade, but it hasn't happened. It's kind of like, Real Joe Cruz, next time I see Ray, I'm going to ask him to pay me in gold.
Oh.
Yeah, this direct deposit is nice, but I'd much rather have him pay me in gold, right? I'm going to just keep asking and asking and asking. Do you think he'll do it?
Eventually, sir.
Really?
You're that persuasive, sir.
Well, you got a good point. I'm pretty persuasive. The answer I'm looking for is no, Ray won't do it because he doesn't have the ability. He can't. Even if you said, Bob, I would really, really love to pay you in gold, but I just can't. We're just not set up that way, so I cannot pay you in gold. Next time I ask you that question, you'll do a little better, Real Joe. Okay. So we've been asking for more than a decade, but it hasn't happened. Now, imagine what folks back in D.C., congressmen, folks at the IRS, imagine what they must think of us when we come back with such a stupid question. Oh, can you treat us fairly like you treat the states and reimburse us for our EITC payments? They're thinking, these guys have run their own government with thought processes like that? In 2006, Gov Guam paid out $6.2 million for EITC. The amount of EITC-related tax refunds Gov Guam paid out increased to $55 million in 2015. In 2018, it was $57 million. Well, if you were to graph it, my suspicion is that the amount of EITC is directly proportional to the number of migrants that we have coming from the freely associated states who tend to wind up in low-income jobs and who have families. Governor Lulian Guerrero Monday announced she has written to President Trump to seek support on the reimbursement issue. Not quite right. Section 20125B of H.R. 6800 proposes a 75% reimbursement of the cost of EITC. Now listen to this. A 75% reimbursement of the cost of EITC to U.S. areas with tax systems that mirror the IRS tax code, such as Guam. So if they read their own editorial, they would know that they're wrong. So, yeah, it's true. Michael San Nicolas introduced this provision, I think, in the National Defense Authorization Act, saying, can you pay us an amount equal to 75% of the EITC that we pay out? I wouldn't call that a reimbursement. If I lent you $20, Real Joe Cruz, to have the tire changed on your car, you got to change, and the next payday, you gave me $20, I would say that you're reimbursing me, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, let me give you a second scenario. Real Joe Cruz, I had tire trouble with my car, and it cost me $20 to fix my tire, and I had a lot of expense. And you say, here, Bob, here's $20. Did you reimburse me?
No.
No, you just gave me $20, right? That would be what's called an ex gratia payment, I didn't have to do anything to get the money from Real Joe Cruz. He's just such a good guy, so kind-hearted, sitting here enjoying every minute of this lavish praise that I'm heaping upon him. He's just such a great guy that he just gave me the $20. He didn't reimburse me for anything. He just gave it to me. And that's what we're asking the Congress. Congress, can you give us an amount equal to 75% of what we pay out in EITC? Because, and then that's where you can get into the heartthrob stuff like, we're the tip of the spear and, we're this, that, and the other thing. And now let me take a short break here. I'm going to come back, beat up unmercifully on the Post for a little bit more time.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer staycation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,900 by calling Family Finance. Agana 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo at 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978, 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, the next part of this editorial talks about our governor. But in order to lay the proper foundation, I want to talk, excuse me, about our governor and a horse. Here's what happened. Someone got the idea that the governor would like to have a horse to ride. So this person raised horses, and one day, he arranged to have the governor come to his ranch. And when the governor came in, he led this horse over to the governor and said, "Governor, I'm going to make a gift of this horse to you. What do you think?" You know what the governor did, Real Joe Cruz? She said, "Let's open his mouth. I want to look inside."
Yep, that's how you can tell the horse is good, sir.
Uh-huh.
You look a gift horse right in the mouth.
Look, see what his teeth look like. And yeah, that's how you know if it's a really good horse or not, right? Yeah. The fact that somebody gave it to you, so what, right? Okay, let's go on. Mr. President, this is a letter that Lou wrote to the president. Mr. President, it's obvious that you could do better than what Congress has proposed in the HEROES Act for Guam. 75%. A 100% reimbursement of the cost of EITC to Guam is much better, something for which you previously have expressed your report directly to me at the White House. I am humbly requesting for your swift action and support for this in the next package, the governor wrote. So what was the governor doing there, Real Joe Cruz? She wanted to see the inside of that horse's mouth. Governor, rule number one, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. 75% of what we pay out in earned income tax is a wonderful thing if it gets through Congress and the president passes it. I just don't see the wisdom of pressing the president, in the face of this kind of generosity. And then The editorial goes on to say she also wrote letters to Senator Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Can you imagine what Bernie Sanders said when he got his letter from the governor? He probably said, "Oh, I'm glad they can write letters out there in Guam. Let's give them the money." And Guam's own delegate, San Nicolas, all in hopes Congress would compel the federal government to reimburse Guam 100% of EITC-related refunds. Well, Congress wouldn't compel anything. As I've explained, what Congress would do would be to appropriate that amount of money. There's a misunderstanding of how the government functions here, too, apparently. All right, I've got a lot more here on this, but I'm going to stop for a minute and see what Wayne can tell. Wayne, what can you tell me about the EITC? Say again?
Oh, I'm just saying, I guess I'm connected now. I heard you say my name.
Yeah, I said, hey, Wayne, what can you tell me about the EITC?
Anyway, hi, Bob. I love your show. I was just, I think you explained it all technically correct and legally correct, but just that overwhelming thing that I think it's true that our income level here on Guam is probably more tilted towards the middle to lower income. So that rule of EITC, and even though we can keep all our taxes, still that's overwhelming. I think that part has to be paid out in credits and given back because we got to follow that law. So just I think how we need to do it, and you're maybe proposing the correct way, or we might be getting a windfall of how we're requesting it, but still seems it's important for us to try to get that. Otherwise, what we're collecting is still being overwhelmed by what we're giving out in the EITC.
Yeah, you make a good point, Wayne, and I can see that, and I have a couple of answers to that. First of all, if we wanted some help based on the low incomes, then we should make that argument. We should be writing to people saying, hey, look, we have a lot of low-income people here. This would be a good place to tie in the habitual residents from the freely associated states and say, because we have so many low-income people here, the EITC payments hit us harder than it might in any of the 50 states. Can you give us some money? As opposed to, well, treat us the same way you treat us equally like you treat the states, and coming up with an argument that is wrong and BS. Which one?
Yep, that's right on. You got it. Like you're saying, you're saying, how can we make progress if our argument is so inaccurate? So anyway, I'm glad that you could just reassure me of how I was thinking. That's correct, but as you're saying, yeah, that argument that's not the right tact, and maybe hopefully by putting in what you just said will help redirect someone out there in the government to do it in, just how you suggested maybe.
Here's two more things, Wayne. Since 1986, we have had the ability to junk the Internal Revenue Code and enact our own tax code. So what we could do if we wanted to get out from under the EITC, we could enact our own tax law, which would be just exactly like the IRC, except it would leave out, I think it's Section 51, the EITC section. Then we wouldn't have to pay any of it. We could do that. We've had that ability for years and years, but we haven't done it.
Yeah, wow. That's now I know that additional point, but yeah, I guess no one in government wants to champion it. But so it's in our own hands that we could solve that. But yeah.
It's kind of like I think it's the Mad Hatter and Alice in Wonderland, who told Alice they were talking about maps, and Alice was looking for a map to find something, and the Mad Hatter said, "If you don't know what your destination is, any old map will do." So if we don't know what we're talking about, we're never going to get anywhere. Here's the third approach, Wayne. As burdensome as the EITC could be on Guam because of the disproportionate number of low-income taxpayers, there really is something to grab a hold of with respect to the habitual migrants who actually make money off our tax system. So they come to Guam, they're supposed to work, they get minor jobs, they have large families, so they actually net out more than people who are working hard. So maybe we could do it like this, that they get the national government to reimburse us all of the EITC credits that we pay out to habitual residents from the freely associated states if we didn't want to follow the other two alternatives. But I think my main point here, Wayne, is that you never get anywhere if your argument is full of holes, and that's where we are.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it, and you clarified that, and you brought up two real good points, and I can see your frustration every time with I hope someone in the government's listening and noted those two things, and as they just try to make progress. And so goes with a lot of the topics you bring up, is just if they could get on track with the right way or direction, then instead of, again, 10 years go by and we're still complaining. I mean, that has to do even with our guiding our own destiny here on Guam. So. Okay, so anyway, thank you. I appreciate it. I was so glad that I could get on and get that clarified.
Glad you called, Wayne. Nice talking to you.
Okay, have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah. So those are some alternatives, and we could fix it just by delinking from the IRC and canceling out the earned income tax credit. I'll get a little bit more into that later on. So the governor also wrote to Elizabeth Warren. Now, she really didn't need to write a letter to Elizabeth Warren. You know what she could have done, Real Joe Cruz?
Send smoke signals, sir?
You could have built a big bonfire out behind Government House and sent her smoke signals.
She could have beat the war drum, too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of wonder, how she addressed her letter. Dear Senator Pocahontas, okay, yeah. And Bernie Sanders, who, of course, flapped his wings and growled when he saw we'll give you that money. And Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Okay, and then San Nicolas stated in part, while our congressional office has brought the federal reimbursement of EITC furthest since its formal inception as a local liability in 1996. Once again, just dead wrong. And I'll get into that when I get into another story. While we have secured a 75% reimbursement to the EITs and the HEROES Act currently before the Senate, the fact remains that the government of Guam is obligated to pay the people what they are owed. Not that it didn't always used to be that way. Remember, people would wait years and years for their tax refunds. Yeah. Okay. Unless the federal government agrees to reimburse GovGuam for tax refunds stemming from the EITC, our local government could sink deeper in the financial hole at a time when tourism revenues are looking bleak for another year at least. Okay, I quibble with the word reimburse, of course. That sentence should read, unless the federal government agrees to give us an amount equal to the EITC payments, etc., But yeah, we are sinking, and the government of Guam's not doing much about it. Gov Guam would need federal reimbursement even more under the HEROES Act. I don't understand that. Okay, the HEROES Act increases the maximum EITC credit for childless filers from $538 to $1,487, a 275%, according to the governor's office. So it is a sliding scale. And in the beginning, people without children weren't eligible for EITC. It's been on the books since 1975, and Congress has amended it a lot of times. Each amendment makes it more generous. Going back to the editorial here, additionally, the legislation would increase the generosity of the credit's refundability as filers earn income. If we are indeed the tip of the spear, then it's time for the federal government to make it good on its obligations to Guam. Obligation to do something that there is no obligation for, and treat Guam with more importance. One good way to start is with a full EITC reimbursement. It's not a lot to ask for, considering Guam's role as the most remote outpost for America out here in the Pacific. Okay. I don't think that whoever wrote that editorial is going to get the Pulitzer Prize for journalism this year. Okay, I've got more. Just to show you, I'm afraid this is one of those, well, you know, everybody says it, so it must be right. Every one of the news outlets talks in terms of directors of departments, which is wrong. There is no director of the Department of Administration. There's a director of administration, there's a director of labor, a director of public works, and so on. But every one of them gets it wrong. So my suspicion is that, you know, when folks from the Post read or hear PNC News, they hear it, they figure, well, they're saying, I guess they're saying the same thing we are. I guess we must be right. So my suspicion is that everybody gets this EITC wrong, that, you know, and that Congress reimburses the states for the money they pay out, which is just dead wrong. Everybody gets it wrong, except where, Real Joe Cruz?
Right here, sir.
Right here on Tall Tales, where you can almost always go to get the right scoop on anything, correct?
True, sir.
Yeah. Okay, and this is from the Post, July 27, which was last night. Congressman Michael San Nicolas has responded to Governor Leon Guerrero's letter to him regarding earned income tax credits payments to Guam. Quote, while our congressional office has brought the federal reimbursement of EITC further since its formal inception as a local liability in 1996, wrong. It did not become a local liability in 1996 to the extent it has been a liability for us to pay out. The act took effect in 1975. I'll get to 1996 in a minute. And while we have secured a 75% reimbursement for the EITC and the HEROES Act currently before the Senate, so if the Senate passes the HEROES Act without amending that section, we'll get at 75%, an amount equal to 75% of what we pay out in EITC, which will be a miracle. You know, and San Nicolas is right. That's the best anybody has ever done with this. Okay, let's take a short break, and I'll come right back to Michael San Nicolas.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They're open in Agotnia, ready for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services. Call them at 479-2652. They're open from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Get your Mezcla fix today.
So that's quite an accomplishment if Michael San Nicolas is able to get the Congress to pay us an amount equal to 75% of what we pay out in EITC. Now, this release goes on to say, according to the congressman, Public Law 2374, signed into law in 1996 by former Lieutenant Governor Madeleine Berdallo, and voted in favor of by Lieutenant Louis, and voted in favor of by Governor Leon Guerrero refunds. Okay, I'm going to label this, and this goes right straight to Michael San Nicolas. I haven't done this before. Today is a day of exceptions. What does it say, Real Joe Cruz?
News. I can't see. Fake news.
Fake news. Fake news. Yeah. So let's take it apart. All right. There was a Public Law 23-74, which enacted a code section 11 GCA 4101. And what that code section did was it said that what that public law did was it said the legislature does not agree with the interpretation of section 41 of the Internal Revenue Code, the IETC section, and has determined that the Internal Revenue Code does require that EITC be paid. And it also says that to the extent necessary, there is an appropriation to pay EITC. Okay, now this is complicated. Let's get out our long order notebooks here, Real Joe Cruz. All right. So we had an Attorney General's opinion that said, yeah, you got to pay EITC. The Organic Act says you got to do it. You got to do it. And no, you don't need any local appropriation because of the way the federal statute is worded and because what you're dealing with is the mirror image of the Internal Revenue Code. Okay, there was a spat between Governor Gutierrez and the Republican legislature at that time. The governor did not want to pay EITC as a matter of fiscal responsibility. So the governor had his Director of Revenue and Taxation, Joey Duenas, come up with a revenue ruling. I think it was 96-03, a very comprehensive revenue ruling capitalizing on that portion of the Organic Act that says that the IRC is applicable to Guam as it is in the United States, except where manifestly inapplicable. So Joey made a really good argument saying that it is manifestly inapplicable because the purpose of applying the Internal Revenue Code to Guam was to provide Guam with enough revenue to run its government so that the Congress wouldn't have to do an annual appropriation for the government of Guam to function. Instead of that, a mirror image of the tax code was applied to Guam. And by the way, that happened a lot. For instance, well, I won't go into that, but that was the idea of the mirror image. So Joey's argument was the mirror image of the Internal Revenue Code is to raise revenue. When the Earned Income Tax Credit requires that a taxpayer receive a check larger than any tax refund, it's no longer a revenue-raising measure. It is a social welfare piece of legislation. And obviously manifestly inapplicable because that wasn't the purpose of the EITC. So that Guam, you know, under his reading, didn't have to pay the EITC. Okay, I don't want to keep Anthony waiting here because still got a lot of jabbering to do on this, so I'm going to stop for a second. Well, let's see, I can do it. Yeah, Anthony, I've got a break coming up in about 4 minutes. We can come back to you afterwards if necessary, but what do you got?
I'll just do it real quick, Uncle, and I can call back tomorrow. From what I understand with the Earned Income Tax Credit, it's a tax credit. It's not a tax refund.
Right.
And from what I understand is that they allow families with children to, I think it's tied into the number of children you have. And that what the family is supposed to do is whatever they're relieved from paying the government of Guam, they can take that money and pay for daycare centers, take care of their kids while they go back to work. So, no, this government of Guam, they just want to be reimbursed because that's money that they don't take from the taxpayer. And it reduces the amount that the taxpayer have to pay at the end of the year. And so the whole thing behind that is give them a credit, they pay for daycare, they can go to work. And that's the way I understand EITC. So, no, I can expand on it tomorrow. My name is Anthony, and I'm number 16 on the ballot.
Number 16 on the ballot?
Yeah, they only allow 15 names, so I'm 16. I'm outside.
You're going to have to really work hard to get elected, Anthony.
No, but the EITC, they didn't call it an earned income tax refund. It's a credit that there's no cash involved. But the thing is, because the government, that's money that they cannot pinch from the taxpayer. Now they want to get reimbursed about this loss, the loss of income that they got. But the families, from what I understand, the families don't have cash in hand that they can go. In a multi-level, they don't get that much tax taken out. They're able to get credited to their income, and the hope is that they use that portion of it to go pay for somebody to take care of their kids so they can go to work. And so we can expand on that tomorrow, no, Uncle?
Okay, I gotta take a break. Thanks for calling, Anthony.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another stimulus proposal. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Senate Republicans offering a bill about $1 trillion in coronavirus-related spending.
But it's likely just an opening offer in negotiations on a final deal with Democrats.
I know our Democrat colleagues know this crisis is still urgent. I know they know American families need more help.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell unveiled a package of legislation he says will provide funding for schools and small businesses and dole out another round of direct payments to Americans. It also makes good on long-promised liability protections for coronavirus-related lawsuits.
Fox's Jared Halpern reports a compromise may be elusive. Democrats in the House have already approved a $3 trillion economic relief bill. New hopes of relief from the virus itself. Moderna says it's begun giving its experimental vaccine to thousands of volunteers. Coronavirus Task Force member Dr. Anthony Fauci explaining how the Phase 3 clinical trials work.
15,000 people will get the vaccine, 15,000 will get a placebo, and then you determine the difference in infection with the coronavirus.
Dr. Fauci also telling Fox's Special Reports never before has a vaccine candidate advanced to Phase 3 trials this quickly, but he says no corners are being cut. He refused a meeting only weeks ago, but Portland's Mayor Ted Wheeler says he now wants to sit down with Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf to talk about a ceasefire by the federal agents protecting federal property against nightly acts of violence.
Portland police said protesters launched mortar-style fireworks over the fence, protecting the courthouse, lit fires, and threw objects, but they said they did not help disperse crowds or make any arrests or use CS gas. The city council voted to ban police from cooperating with federal agents in the city.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Hafide, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Attorneys for President Trump again seeking to block a prosecutor's access to his tax returns.
President Trump's legal team calls the subpoena a form of harassment. If they can't block it, they hope to at least severely limit its scope. The move comes after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the subpoena filed by Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance Jr. could be challenged. Vance wanted the personal and corporate returns as he investigated efforts to silence two women who claimed to have had affairs with then-candidate Trump during the 2016 campaign, claims the president has continually denied. The two sides have until mid-August to get all of their legal challenges into the court. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
A Hawaii man has pleaded guilty to what prosecutors call extreme cyberstalking. Lauren Akamura admitting in court that he sent more than 500 people, including food delivery drivers, repairmen, and even prostitutes, to a family's home in Utah over an 18-month period, on top of sending them threatening messages and doxing them, all because he felt one of the family members had slighted him. He'll be sentenced in October. Garmin says some of its systems are coming back online after what it now admits was a cyber attack.
The GPS and wearable fitness gadgets company acknowledges that it was hit and assured customers that there's no indication their data was compromised. But hackers encrypted some of its systems, knocking its fitness tracking and pilot navigation services offline. Garmin did not specify that ransomware was to blame. That's when hackers infiltrate a company's network and use encryption to scramble data until payment is received. But a person familiar with the incident tells the Associated Press that attackers had turned over decryption keys that would allow Garmin to unlock the data scrambled in the attack. Garmin had no comment on ransom the company may have paid. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumont. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Here we are, back again. Tall Tales, still dealing with the Earned Income Tax Credit. Real Joe Cruz, remember during the first half of the program when we were talking about the metaphor about how to deal with a gift when someone gives you a gift? What is something that you shouldn't do?
Look it in the mouth, sir.
Look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Lou is doing when she's asking for 100% instead of 75%. So I use this this metaphor here, the one that says, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But, you know, when that happened, Lou spoke to the horse before she actually got the horse to open his mouth. Do you know what she said?
No, sir.
She said to the horse, why the long face? Yeah, Nate horned in and left me that one on Facebook. Okay, so this is classic fake news here that St. Nicholas is propounding. 23-74 was put in place because the governor did not want to pay the Earned Income Tax Credit. He had a very well-constructed revenue ruling from Joey Duenas, his director of Rev Tax. And the way the mirror image is constructed, the director of revenue and taxation is more officious when it comes to interpreting the Guam territorial income tax than the attorney general is. So Joey's interpretation, in my mind, was correct. He called it right. The Internal Revenue Code was applied to Guam as a revenue-raising measure, not as a matter of social welfare. So there was a battle between the legislature, which of course wanted to pay the Earned Income Tax Credit, and having someone tell them this is just a social welfare measure made it all the more attractive for the legislature, of course. So the legislature said the governor said that he didn't have to, and besides that, he couldn't because there was no appropriation for him to pay it. And of course, you know, we've got certifying officers and all kinds of other things in place to keep the government from paying out money when there's no appropriation. In fact, we've even had the governor former governor, the Carl, on this show tell us that he didn't pay the earned income tax credit because what he did was he just had the tax forms reprinted and took out the earned income tax blank, the part that the taxpayer would have to fill out in order to get the earned income tax credit, which would be consistent with Joey Duenas' opinion. So the governor was set that he was not going to pay the EITC. The legislature, of course, knowing that there are a lot of voters who probably would take issue with that and saw that there was a way to appeal to certain parts of the electorate by paying the earned income tax credit, took measures to force the governor to pay the earned income tax credit. That was public law, a bill that became public law 23-74. In the statement of findings, it said, the legislature doesn't agree with Joey's interpretation. We owe the earned income tax credit. And the bill itself said that the earned income tax credit, in accordance with the Internal Revenue Code, would have to be paid. And to the extent necessary, there was an appropriation to pay it. So the governor kind of had his argument taken away from him by that law. So the earned income tax credit was paid. Now, that law was repealed by Public Law 25-176. So it was repealed a long, long time ago. And so San Nicolas is very, very clever here, because it is true that Lou Leon Guerrero was a senator at the time. And it is true that she voted for public law, for the bill that became 23-74. This did not make it a local law. If you read it, you'd understand that it doesn't make it a local law. And it doesn't obligate Guam to do anything that it isn't already obligated to do, according to one interpretation of the Internal Revenue Code. So he says, and then he says, San Nicolas says, this is local money, not federal. Well, all of the money that we collect from the income tax is local money. That's the beauty of our tax situation. He says it's local money, not federal, but we will work to correct the legacy EITC liability that originated locally during the Underwood congressional era. So, you know, what he says has a basis in truth, but what he says is not true. Underwood had nothing to do with this. It happened during the time that Underwood was in Congress, and I think I've explained that 23-74 was to overrule Joey Duenas, the director of Rev Tax, and to make him pay what, according to one interpretation, he should have been paying anyhow. So that's why I label this, as far as San Nicolas is concerned, it's fake news. Yeah, and I also have the Post, the Post front page story, Governor to Trump, fully reimburse Guam's EITC costs. Governor Leon Guerrero on Monday announced she had sent letters to the president, etc. Gov Guam has paid out early, I think they mean nearly, 750 million, etc. The EITC is a tax credit for the working poor and applies to Guam because the island mirrors the federal tax system. Exactly right. You got it right, Post. And then the next sentence says this: states get reimbursed for EITC costs, but Gov Guam has not been able to get reimbursement. So you contradicted yourself in your own news story, Guam Daily Post. States don't get reimbursed because, like you said in the sentence before, the island mirrors a federal tax system. The story goes on to say new legislation that passed the House and waits the Senate's action would provide a 75% reimbursement for Guam under an amendment Delegate Michael San Nicolas pushed for inclusion with the help of Puerto Rico. The governor wrote to Trump and Congress leaders urging for full reimbursement. If you're going to bring any horses over here, save me the trouble. I want a note from the horse's dentist. Mr. President, it's obvious that you would do better than what Congress has proposed, etc., the governor wrote. San Nicolas said Public Law 2374, signed into law in 1996 by Governor Madeline Berdallo, committed the government of Guam to pay the EITC with a general fund. Well, yeah, in a way, but it's fake news. Well, our congressional office has brought the federal reimbursement of EITC further since its formal inception as a local liability in 1996. And while we have secured a 75% reimbursement for EITC in the HEROES Act currently before the Senate, the fact remains that the government of Guam is obligated to pay the people what they're owed. So, you know, with representation like this in Congress and with newspapers writing editorials like this, we're darn lucky that it isn't worse than what it is, because San Nicolas is propounding fake news, and obviously the Guam Daily Post and the other outlets are not clever enough, sharp enough, incisive enough, ambitious enough to call him on it. Now, if one were to look at the committee report for that bill that I just mentioned, that would be Public Law 23-74. There's a wealth of information there. The bill, the committee report, the revenue ruling by Joey San Nicolas, the first Attorney General's opinion, the second Attorney General's opinion, where the Attorney General reverses himself and goes along with Joey. It's all right there. And nowadays it's not that hard to go to the Internal Revenue Code and look at that section. Very disappointing day, Guam Daily Post. You've been the bellwether here for good editorials for so long. You know, if the Daily News had written something like that, I'd have probably said, well, at least they're writing something. It's better to write something that's dead wrong than not write anything at all. So the Post is up to 211. I'm not going to subtract anything from the Post score, but the Post got a 0 today. The only reason they got, well, I guess I could give them a lower grade. I could use the earned income tax mechanism and give them a lower grade than 0. I could give them -10, right? Yeah, it's tempting. Okay, back to the card. Here it is, 5:18, and we're finally finished with Zemi Ikotny. But it was time well spent. You know, this earned income tax thing, earned income tax credit, is very important, and it's very contentious, and it's important, I think, that citizens really know what's going on in order to make intelligent decisions when they go to the polls in November. So I see that as kind of part of my job, you know, to take these things apart and actually give you what's really going on, what the real facts are, point out fake news when I see it, point out an editorial that's dead wrong when I read it, and I hope that's the reason that you come to Tall Tales. Now, I know there are other reasons that you come to Tall Tales. The overwhelming sense of humor and wit of the producer of Tall Tales, the the one and only Real Joe Cruz. Real Joe Cruz, who's been attempting to build his own cult of personality since I brought Tall Tales over here to the point. I know that's one reason that you want to listen to Tall Tales, and of course my deadpan, understated exaggerations, facetiousness, sarcasm, etc., I suppose is another reason. But the real content here is very important when it comes to issues like that. The next item on the card, well, I guess I could just skip down through, Troy, it's been 69 days since Janella'd anybody, and Tina hasn't found something that is of an emergent nature to the public health or safety of the people for the last 22 days. And, of course, Louise Monia lost her permanent position on the card when she made a really timely decision that she wasn't going to run for re-election. She decided that right after the ballots were printed. Very timely. Okay, next item on the card is Robert Underwood versus Fudge. Fudge. We all know what fudge is, but it has a little different meaning here because Fudge is the chairperson of the committee that Robert submitted of the committee of the House of Representatives that Robert submitted testimony to. And I'm not going to stick Robert with fake news, but Robert has not covered himself with glory on this issue either. I have a story here from PNC. Congressional candidate Robert Underwood has called for, quote, real representation for Guam and the other U.S. territories in written testimony submitted before the U.S. House of Representatives hearing on voting rights and election administration. On Tuesday, July 28, the House Administration Committee Subcommittee on Elections will hold a hearing to address the denial of voting rights in U.S. territories, an historic first. While Congress has regularly held hearings addressing issues of political status in U.S. territories, never before has it held a hearing focused specifically on the issue of voting rights and disenfranchisement in these areas. In his testimony, Underwood said the government should live up to the American creed of representative democracy. Now, once again, preface here, what we're going to see is the usual righteousness preening, virtue signaling, chest beating, all aimed at perfecting a perpetual right to bitch. Because Underwood, I'll give you a preview, Underwood is going to go through the same thing, you know, how many people have fought in the armed forces, the right of the government by the consent of the people, on, beating on these general themes. But of course, when he gets to the end of his testimony, does he tell us how this is going to happen? How people in the territories are going to be able to have real representation in Congress? No. Because I think it's impossible. It's just not possible. But it makes for a good stump speech to stand up and wave around the Declaration of Independence. With the Declaration of Independence says, let's see. Governments deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, government. We don't have consent to our government here. We never got a chance to determine our political status, and we don't have a voting representative in the House or the Senate. We can't vote for president. And you also hear this one: we're second-class citizens. Of course, we're not second-class citizens. And of course, the government, the feds, are the boogeyman here. The federal government won't give us the right to vote. Of course, the federal government can't give us the right to vote. But let me get back to Robert's story here. In his testimony, Underwood said the U.S. government should live up to the American creed of representative democracy, which gives consent of the government to legislative bodies. Recalling his experience when he represented Guam in the 103rd through the 107th Congress, in the House of Representatives, Underwood said his experience was invigorating and inspiring, but it could also be exasperating and sometimes dispiriting. Representing a territory in the nation's capital represented many challenges and difficulties. The ability to fully participate in the proceedings of the House and the lack of participation of our own constituents' involvement in the selection of national leadership, most notably the president, is always top of the mind. The best way to explain the nature of American citizenship in the territories was to explain to other Americans that territorial citizens could not vote for president, Underwood said. He added that overseas territories seem like a different world, and the U.S. government tends to suspend the full meaning of democracy when it comes to them. Territorial Americans do not grant their consent to this body to make decisions for them. Territorial Americans are not allowed to participate in the selection of the nation's chief executive, who possesses legal and regulatory authority over them as much as he does the 50 states and D.C. This is not just illogical. This is un-American, he said as he beat upon his chest. And it has no promise of being remedied because we think that voting rights and election reform does not include voting power and consent of the governed. The full discussion of whether territory should be represented in the body, which makes laws over them, is essential to defining the true meaning of the democratic creed. Voting for president is equally important, but the lack of consent of the governed in the very body that governs should be an affront to all and not just those people who live beyond the water's edge. It should be an affront. To remedy this injustice, Underwood is calling on the U.S. government to grant real representation to the territories and let them vote for president. Now, how is the U.S. government going to grant real representation to the territories? It can't. And let's just stop and examine what voting in the United States is really all about. Now, I'm going to start out with something that's going to shock you, okay? You could read the United States Constitution backwards and forwards, and you will not find in that Constitution that a person or a citizen has the right to vote for anything. Whoa. So let's take a minute here and take a look at the Constitution right after we come back from the seventh inning stretch to the Constitution.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's introduces the new crispy ribs. Mouth-watering Texas-sized ribs tossed in country fried steak batter. Order your crispy ribs as an appetizer or a full rack entree with your choice of 2 sides. Each order comes with one of 3 new dipping sauces: the creamy avocado salsa, sweet Kentucky, or the sweet mango chipotle sauce. Chili's crispy ribs are available for a limited time only, so hurry in and enjoy a crispy, juicy ribs experience today. Chili's is on the 2nd floor at the Two Sands Plaza. Chili's, we do ribs like no place else.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer staycation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,900 by calling Family Finance. Agana 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo at 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Here we are, 7th inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois. And we come right back to the House of Representatives, and my statement that you won't find in the Constitution a statement that says a person or a citizen has the right to vote for anything. Starting out with Article 1, Section 2, and the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every 2nd year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. So in other words, Wisconsin has a Senate and an Assembly. So if you can vote for members of the Wisconsin Senate, then you can also vote for members of Congress. But you'll notice it tells you how the members are chosen. It doesn't say that anybody has a right to vote. The Senate, let's see, Section 3, the Senate shall be composed of 2 senators from each state for 6 years. They were chosen by the state legislatures, but that's been changed. And then for the president, we have a Rube Goldberg type system to choose our president. I'll explain. You know what a Rube Goldberg system is, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
Well, you'll find out before the program's over. Let's see. For the president, the president is chosen by the so-called Electoral College. And there are electors for each state in an amount equal to the number of senators and representatives in that state. They are independent people who are not government officials. So the Electoral College chooses the president. So in a sense, nobody gets a chance to vote for president. Then we have some amendments that actually use the word voting. Let's see, I got a call here from Dr. Poole. Okay, I'm going to hang on to the amendments until I have a chat with Dr. Poole. Good afternoon, Dr. Poole.
Good afternoon, Judge. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm way off topic, but it's something that you mentioned earlier, and I'm just now getting off work, and I didn't get a chance to call you then. But it had to do with looking gift horse in the mouth, and I know you understand it. And but there's things old people like you and me understand, that we have an obligation to Well, like Rube Goldberg, we've got to bring Real Joe along on that. I don't know how many decades Goldberg's been dead, but those cartoons should not be forgotten. So
True.
You need to. But the reason, as you alluded to, but the specific reason why you don't look a gift horse in the mouth is that's precisely how you age a horse, and it's the best way. And until they get really old, it's kind of the only way. But it's hard to look at a horse that's 7 or 8 years old or 15 or 16 years old and know the difference without looking in the mouth. But the wear patterns on the teeth are pretty predictable, and so that's why you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. It's rude. It's a gift. You're not supposed to look in there and how much horse am I getting? So I just thought I would add that little veterinary component that every schoolboy knew 50, 100 years ago, but maybe not so much now.
Well, that's a really important detail, Doc. And
well, I told you I was way off.
And
but as I said, I
could you
obligation.
Could you share with our international radio listening audience what your profession is?
Well, I'm a veterinarian, and bon vivant and raconteur and a lot of other professions.
Yeah. So when you tell us how to determine the age of a horse, you are not just talking about something that you saw on the internet or something like that.
No, I was actually trained in how to do that, although I've largely forgotten that. I could never trust my ability to age a horse now, but used to be able to do it, within 2 or 3 years with some reliability.
You could tell the age of a horse by looking in his mouth very accurately.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I'll bet people really hated to give you Christmas presents.
Well, as long as it's not a horse. No. Anyway, Judge, thanks for humoring me.
It's always good to have you call. Thanks for calling, Tom.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. What's his name again, Real Joe Cruz?
Mr. Ed? The horse? Oh, Dr. Poole. Dr. Tom Poole.
Mr. Ed.
Yeah. I was just thinking about Mr. Ed for some reason. The horse is a horse, of course.
Yeah. Why the long face? So the next time he calls, we're going to call him Mr. Ed, just in deference to you, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, let's take a look at the amendments. Okay, on voting, then the big one is the 15th Amendment. So that's the smart money over there. The guy over there, in the Easy Boy is saying, "Oh, there's a constitutional right to vote. How about the 15th Amendment?" Here's what the 15th Amendment says. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So you can abridge it or deny it. You just can't do it because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. But it's not a positive grant of authority or a positive grant of a right. It doesn't say every citizen of the United States has a right to vote. It says the right to vote cannot be abridged or denied because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. This is what we call negative rights. And all of the Bill of Rights, well, most of them are phrased as negative rights, perhaps except for the 13th. But anyhow, we'll keep going on here with voting. So that's what that one says. Then we come to the one that everybody's all fired up about this year, the 19th Amendment, which was ratified on August 18, 1920. So women have been voting for 100 years in the United States. So the same guy, hey, how about the 20th Amendment? Women have the right to vote. Well, not really, because the 20th says the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. So you can deny or abridge, but you can't do it because of sex, race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Okay, then we go on a little bit farther, and we've got the 23rd, which I think was a huge mistake, and that gave the District of Columbia 3 electors in the presidential race. But once again, it doesn't say people in the District of Columbia have the right to vote for president. And then we have the 24th, the right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president, vice president, etc., shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. So, negative rights, race, color, previous condition of servitude, sex, poll tax. And then finally, we've got the 26th, July 1, 1971. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of age. So we've got these negative rights: age, race, color, previous condition of servitude, or sex. But nowhere in the Constitution is there language, every citizen of the United States has a right to vote. So what it all means is this: if there is an election, if there is a vote being conducted, you cannot be kept away from that vote by either the United States or a state for the reasons that I keep ticking off: race, color, previous condition of servitude, sex, poll tax, or age. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says everyone has a right to vote. So that kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to be a demagogue and to be able to say things like territorial Americans are not allowed to participate in the election of the nation's chief executive, etc. This is not just illogical. This is un-American. Well, yeah. And it has no promise of being remedied because we think that voting rights in election reform does not include voting power and consent of the government. The full discussion of whether territories should be represented in the body which makes laws over them is essential to defining the true meaning of the democratic creed, etc. And then he goes on to say, to remedy this injustice, Underwood is calling on the U.S. government to grant real representation to the territories. The U.S. government, that means the Congress and the President, should grant real representation of the territories. Well, how would they do that? How about if Congress passed a law that said Guam shall have one voting member of Congress, 2 members of the United States Senate, and 3 members in the Electoral College. The House of Representatives passes it, the Senate passes it, it goes to the President and signs it. Is that it? Because that's what Underwood says. He says the U.S. government should grant real representation to the territories. Well, we wouldn't run into the Guam Daily Post, Michael San Nicolas theory of statutory construction in any one of those bodies, because they would all know we don't have the power to grant voting representation. We don't have the power to create a seat in the House, 2 in the Senate, and 3 in the Electoral College. We don't have the power to do that. That's what the House would say. That's what the Senate would say. Even the president would say that. Where does that power lie? It lies in the amendatory process of the United States Constitution. So if you were to look at Article 5, the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, etc. And when it's ratified by 3/4 of the states, then it becomes part of the Constitution. That's a pretty heavy burden. A bill to amend the Constitution allowing Guam representation in the House, the Senate, and the Electoral College would have to pass both the House and the Senate with supermajorities, and then it would then be sent out to the states, and 38 of the states would have to approve it. So it doesn't happen very often. It's only happened 27 times since the Constitution was adopted, was ratified in 1789. So it's not a matter of the U.S. government granting representation to the territories. And along those lines, I was wondering if Robert Underwood, when he was in Congress, if he introduced a bill to amend the Constitution along the lines of what we're talking about. Because if he didn't, then what is he talking about? He had the chance to start the amendatory process moving. And then he goes on to say, if they are going to be kept as territories until a future and final political status is determined. Now, this is kind of a tricky sentence, too, because I maintain that we have our future and final political status right now. Now, I know you hear a lot of people say, well, you know, territorial status is just temporary. Well, for 11 of the southern states, statehood was just temporary. Remember that? So life is temporary. Everything is temporary until it's not anymore. So that again, is a tricky sentence. If they are going to be kept as territories until a future and final political status is determined. Now, I think Underwood is a separatist. So that final and future political status, if you've been listening to Tall Tales, you know that final status, if it isn't what we have now, can only be one thing: independence, the big I. Going on with what he said, then they should be given the right to grant their consent to this body. As it stands now, the people of Guam, especially those in the military, must choose between voting for their congressional delegate or voting for president. If you are a soldier from Guam in a combat area today, you could choose to vote for your congressional representative or give up residency and vote for president. I don't know how you would do that. If you're a soldier and you're in a combat area, maybe. I was thinking you're in a combat area and you're sent to Iraq. That doesn't give you the opportunity to vote in Montana. And it certainly doesn't give you the opportunity to vote in Iraq. So I don't think this means what it says. But then I think it over a little bit, and it says, if you are a soldier from Guam in a combat area today, you could choose to vote for a congressional representative, etc. Well, maybe that's true, because maybe you'd be a soldier and be sent to Portland. Combat area, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah.
The combat area?
Combat area, yeah. You could be a soldier sent to a combat area like Portland, for instance. So maybe if you're there long enough, you can say, well, I'm going to be a resident of Oregon and I'm going to vote in Oregon. Of course, even that is kind of chancy, because you don't know if they're ever going to vote for anything in Oregon, they have direct democracy. It's called the democracy of the Molotov cocktail. Okay, we're going down the home stretch here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña is taking your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair. Mezcla is ready to serve you and your family for your dine-in experience and takeout services. To ensure everyone's safety and comfort, Team Mezcla has taken further steps in maintaining a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. For more information, please call 479-2652 or 479-2653. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Okay, so here we are again, back on Tall Tales. I just want to, I should have mentioned a little earlier, but on this idea of the right to vote, the Constitution with its negative protections here does protect the right of people to vote when there are things to vote for. And as an example, I'm going to go back again to the 15th Amendment, which says, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Well, we know exactly how that one works because we wanted to have a vote dealing with Chamorro self-determination. And Dave Davis was not allowed to perfect his ability to vote in that particular lash-up, alleging a violation of the 15th Amendment, that he was denied the right to participate based on race or color, not previous condition of servitude. And, of course, the courts agreed with him. So that's how these negative rights work. That they don't say you have a right to vote. It just says that the government can't take your vote away from you for certain reasons. Okay, back to Robert Underwood now, who says, it's the American, it's truth, justice, and the American way. Demand that people in the territories should be able to vote for a member in Congress. It's consent of the government and all that stuff, Well, anyone who's spent any time with this knows that the system isn't designed that way, was never designed that way, and it was there was no intention to design it the way it's designed to deny people in insular territories their right to vote. Because when the Constitution was put together in 1789, I suspect that the framers didn't even know that there was such a thing as the island of Guam. And initially, the United States attitude was that it would not be an imperial country, that it would not attempt to establish an empire. We only became an imperial country probably in 1898 when we decided we'd go to war with Spain so we could have our own colony called the Philippines on the rim of Asia. and that's when we became we launched into our imperial mode. But the framers never thought in terms of an empire, and if they had, they might have cranked in some method so that the outlying parts of the empire could, in fact, vote for the government in the mother country. But they didn't. So here we are. So we're in a situation, I've used analogies before, but it's like I go down and I buy a new Ford 150, and I take it into a gas station, and I want to fill it up with diesel fuel. Well, the nozzle won't fit into the gasoline filler. What would you call it? Real joke.
Orifice.
Yeah. You can't put the. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's not the same diameter.
Yeah, right. So, you take it back to the dealer and you say, I got screwed here. You sold me a truck that I can't burn diesel fuel in. And I want you to either fix it so it'll burn diesel fuel or give me my money back. And the dealer says, I'm sorry, sir. A Ford 150 burns gasoline. It's not designed to burn diesel fuel. If you fill it up with diesel fuel, if you could, you'd only ruin it. It's just not designed that way. So there's no way we can make it burn diesel fuel. Well, it's not a completely apt analogy, but that's where we are now. The Constitution is designed so that political rights are exercised by people living in the 50 states. As far as civil rights are concerned, thanks to our Supreme Court and other things, your civil rights are functions of national citizenship, but your political rights are functions of state citizenship. Now, Underwood says in his testimony, grant real representation to the territories and let them vote for president. Who's the grantor here? Who can do that? Okay, now, I mentioned Rube Goldberg before, and I'm going to go to Rube Goldberg, picking up on this article that I roundly criticized a little earlier by John Caves. Remember that one, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. In the debate over statehood for D.C., we also need to consider representation for territories. There's a lot of errors in that article, and it was very properly criticized. So Mr. Caves has come up with a system to allow folks in the territories to vote. I would call it a Rube Goldberg mechanism, and here's what Wikipedia says about Rube Goldberg. A Rube Goldberg machine, named after American cartoonist Rube Goldberg, is a machine intentionally designed to perform a simple task in an indirect and overly complicated way. Usually these machines consist of a series of simple, unrelated devices. The action of each triggers the initiation of the next, eventually resulting in a stated goal. The best example I could give you, you've been to the Micronesia Mall, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
You know, and out there in the atrium, you know, that big cage, you know, where there's something that kicks a ball up and the ball goes around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, if you could rig that up so at the bottom of it, there were a comb, and you could stick your head under the comb, and it would comb your hair, that would be a Rube Goldberg device. Got it?
Got it.
Yeah, all right. So, I'm going to have to pick this up. We'll come back to Rube Goldberg tomorrow. Okay, so another exciting episode of Tall Tales. Real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow for more Tall Tales. See you then.